Hey, ethics students, this is Dr. Robinson. This is going to be an incredibly short video lecture for Chapter 3, Multicultural Competence and Social Justice. And the reason why this is going to be really short is because, one, this is a relatively short chapter. Um, uh, and it's a relatively short chapter, and it's going to be a short lecture because we are going to talk about this at every step of the way as we continue to talk about ethics. And as you continue on in your counseling degree program, and then hopefully if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, as you being a multiculturally competent counselor should be something that you engage in as you continue in your career. So this isn't a short chapter because there isn't a lot of info, or this isn't a short chapter because it doesn't warrant a lot of attention. As you'll see, this is something that we're going to be talking about, and we're going to infuse it in a lot of our conversations as we continue on throughout our discussions together. This PowerPoint, again, is super brief. This is one that I teach multicultural counseling. You may have me for that as well. And this is just a brief PowerPoint that is going to follow your book a little bit, but in multicultural counseling, again, you're going to have a specific class dedicated to social justice advocacy and multiculturalism. And we go into all of this in much greater detail. And so what I really want you to know is that there are numerous standards and principles and codes that address multiculturalism. So whether it's the ACA Code of Conduct principles, principles for ASCA, CACREP standards, all the division bylaws and mission statements, everything that all of the organizations and agencies that guide and dictate our work as professional counselors have a multicultural social justice or advocacy. What's the word? I'm drawing a blank for language, but they all consider multiculturalism. They all consider social justice, and they all consider advocacy. And this is a fundamental part of our work. It is expected that as licensed professional counselors, that you be that you become culturally competent. And why is that? Well, because you're going to sit across from people who don't look like you, and you don't look like them, who, from their perspective, of course, who have very different viewpoints than you. Some of those are going to be very conflicting in nature and disturbing and upsetting to you. You may disagree wildly and drastically from your client, but you still have an ethical duty to sit across from them and work with them as a human being. It is going to be your job to be an advocate for your clients and to be aware of issues where folks are marginalized and have been disenfranchised, and being a social justice advocate is your responsibility and your ethical obligation to support and look out for these individuals. And so what that means is a lot of so you can see here, let me jump to here. So what it means for you to be culturally competent, and as we go on in your on page 61, being multiculturally competent starts with self-awareness. So your own bias, your own assumption, your own values, your own views, and knowing them, knowing where you stand on issues, knowing where your convictions are, and because you have to sit across from people who don't necessarily think or believe or feel the way that you do about specific issues, doesn't mean that you can't still have your beliefs. But what it does mean is you have to be aware of those and know when they may harm or impede your work with a client. And we're there for them, remember. And so it means that we have to be aware of those blind spots. We have to be aware of our values, our beliefs, and how that can affect the relationship that we develop with a client. And this can be very difficult. Sometimes we are aware of those biases, and sometimes we're not. And so you can see that self-awareness and assessing your level of bias or judgment is appropriate. It's an ethical obligation. It's a professional thing for you to engage in, a professional practice for you to engage in at all steps of your work, be it a graduate student, LPCA, an LPC practicing for many, many, many years, whatever the position may be or situation may be. This is a responsibility and an action or a professional obligation that you have that you are expected to engage in all the time. Knowledge. So it says here, understanding the worldviews of culturally diverse clients. So it is your responsibility to be informed on your clients. It is not their responsibility to inform you of their worldview or their belief system. It's your responsibility. And again, all of these sort of factors are outlined in ASCA and the ACA Code of Ethics. And so you are to do the footwork. You are to do research on LGBTQ issues if you are unfamiliar or if you have a bias against these issues, and you're going to be working with someone who is lesbian, gay, transgender, whatever it may be, and it's your responsibility to be informed. It is your responsibility. Because if you're not, then you're certainly affecting that relationship. If you don't know about this culture, this race, this religion, this sex, whatever the circumstance may be, then how can you truly attend to your client's issues and concerns? And so, again, being aware, constantly gaining knowledge is a part of your work as a counselor. So obviously, you can see that our work as a counselor does not stop at the 50-minute session, that we're constantly working behind the scenes to make ourselves, in this case, in this instance, the most culturally responsive and aware counselor that we can be. And again, that starts with knowing where our blind spots lie, knowing our awareness. Third are the skills. The third component, and it says in your book, is to practice culturally appropriate skills and interventions for counseling diverse clients. And we talked a little bit about this when we met last time. And so being aware of what is helpful, being aware of interventions that respect and honor the diversity of all clients. So the specific example we talked about in class would be conversion therapy. Conversion therapy is not an intervention that honors the diversity of clients. Conversion therapy only attends to that belief system and that viewpoint, but does not honor, again, the client in any way, shape, or form. And so that is not okay in our world and in our work. It is not for us to infringe upon our clients' values and belief system. So moving on in your textbook, you can see that there are some very specific examples. They go into racism and sexism and ableism, classism, homo prejudice, what else? Ageism, and then spiritual and religious bias. That's often one that is usually a bit more touchy when it comes to personal values than, say, maybe some other ways of discriminating, disenfranchising, marginalizing. And I think that, at this point in the video, I want to just sort of submit to you something for you to reflect upon, and we can revisit this when we meet again. But think about those biases that you have. Think about the value system that you have that may be different than others' value systems and belief systems. And think about the ways that could potentially impact or butt up against your clients' values and belief systems, and maybe make working with them complicated. We all have areas that values and biases and prejudices. We all have these areas that are going to conflict with our clients. And I'd like you to consider these for you. And think about the ways that this could affect your work, and what clients might be difficult for you to work with, what clients behaviors may be difficult for you to work with, et cetera, et cetera. Let's see. Uh, Again, some of this is touched on in your textbook. There's a whole what page is this on? I believe on like 71 or 70. So we talk about racial identity here on 73. And then when we talk about white privilege in, oh goodness, I lost the page. I think that that's really important for us to talk about, and we will. But just because this video is relatively short doesn't mean that we're not going to continue to talk about this when we meet. One, I'm going to check in on this chapter with you all because obviously, I want to touch on this with you, but also because, like I said in the beginning of this video, we are going to talk about multicultural competence, multicultural issues, and the ways that that is infused in the ACA Code of Ethics, the ASCA Code of Ethics, and then, of course, the CACREP standards. Your book details there's 26, I believe, standards or in the Code of Ethics, and then, of course, every bit of the principles of the ACA Code of Ethics speaks to working with multiple populations and diverse groups of individuals and being advocates and considering social justice issues and advocating for your clients and ways that they may be oppressed or marginalized. And we'll go over some of these specific codes as they relate to these competencies, multicultural competencies and social justice and advocacy. Okay, that's it for right now, but we will check in on this when we meet again.